Welcome to the China Desk Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Coming to you today with a weekly newsreel spotlighting significant activity coming from our U.S. Department of Agriculture. On the China Desk, we've talked frequently about the importance of our food security and CCP influences related to ag land, especially in states. But on July 8th, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, alongside U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Farm Security Action Plan. This is a historic plan, first time ever we've had a comprehensive national strategy that makes clear that our nation's national security hinges upon protecting our food security from foreign adversaries and strengthening our own resilience for our food and agricultural systems. America's enemies, it notes, are playing the long game, infiltrating research, buying up farmland, stealing our technology, and launching cyber attacks on our food systems. These are all key issues that we have frequently discussed with guests on the podcast. There are 7 large categories of action that are called for in this new strategy. One is clearly to secure and protect America's farmland. That goes right at the heart of what we've often talked about, of identifying not necessarily the quantity, but the quality of the land that CCP-aligned entities are buying, too often very close to critical infrastructure, military bases, anything that could be pretty significant in a time of contingency between the United States and China. Second key area looks at enhancing agricultural supply chain resilience. Supply chains are something we always talk about, and this in the agricultural realm is enormously important. We have to have the federal government help identify non-adversarial partners to help our states and local partners be able to look for options that are not reliant on the Chinese Communist Party, and also to plan for contingencies if we have some kind of a national crisis. Think COVID. We don't want to learn after it's too late, where we're too dependent on getting our food and processing our food. The third is protecting the nutrition safety net from fraud and foreign exploitation. Too often, we have billions of dollars stolen from us by foreign crime rings. People often think of that when it comes to classical tech, like we hold in our hands and our digital devices, but it applies in spades to agriculture. So much is invested in American R&D, and we don't want our adversaries to be able to take that, get a leg up on us, but more importantly, be able to use it against us going forward in competition or a crisis. Fourth area is defend agricultural research and innovation. Basically, simply put, this is intellectual property protection. It's related to the earlier point, but American ideas need to stay in America and benefit Americans first. Fifth is to put America first in every part of the agricultural department's program, from farm loans to food safety. They are going to try to make sure that all of these programs really address an American need first. It's not something that's there to help the world first, as good as that might be, but an America that has its own independent food supply processed by and for Americans is better able to be a friend and neighbor in need if crisis comes anywhere. Sixth, the safeguarding plant and animal health. This came to the fore with the wild story we covered related to 2 researchers trying to come into Michigan, bringing in a very contagious fungus that would have been a massive danger to our food supplies. This is a link between research facilities, but also just fundamentally looking at protecting our food supply. Post 9/11, we looked at terrorism, about humans trying to hurt humans or maybe going after our energy and other infrastructure. This is a much needed, not too late, very, very needed effort to look at our food supply in a similar way in our animal health issues. Last but not least, we do have in number 7, a look at our critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure is not just important to keeping our cities lighted and our smart devices running. It's also needed for our farms, food, and other supply chains to be flowing at all times. And these are truly national security assets. when Secretary Rollins announced this, she and all of her partners in this effort made clear that agriculture security, food security is national security, and we couldn't agree more. Now, this has been a long-term effort. This is something we've talked about with multiple guests, but we also have many friends and collaborators across different think tanks at the federal level and out in the states. We've worked with legislatures and partners to get bills that help farmers know who they're doing business with and to try to steer away from adversarial countries. That begins with the Chinese Communist Party, but is not limited to them. There are other entities that we want to make sure are not scooping up farmland or gaining any kind of control over our food security and food supply. But we congratulate the federal government team for having this unprecedented breadth across multiple agencies, framing this as a national security issue, and coming up with concrete measures the federal government can help states and localities be better prepared in this regard. Also includes reaching out to allies and making sure that if we aren't ready to onshore all of what we need, and we should try to move in that direction, friendshoring among reliable allies is a must. We cannot allow ourselves to have too much of our critical food supply chain processed by an adversary that could or would use that leverage against us. So we see this as a major down payment on something that has been promised for some time, something that we at the Heritage Foundation, the America First Policy Institute, State Armor, lots of other groups have worked together to advocate many of these things. And now we have a major new strategy across the federal government led by Secretary Rollins. Now, this did drive the national conversation when it was announced early in July, but it remains an important part of the conversation across the country. Now, nationally, got picked up in outlets like Newsweek, US Today, The Hill, The New York Post, several others. Some sort of quoted the Chinese government's reaction, which, dripping with irony, was suggesting that Americans protecting access to our farmland and critical infrastructure from foreign adversaries somehow violated international trade rules. Somewhere along the line, the Chinese government must have missed the memo where they don't engage in anything close to reciprocity, a core theme of our conversations. We don't have Americans able to buy critical infrastructure, ag land, and do processing and control the supply chain for China's food. And so this was a dripping with irony statement where China's basically been called out on engaging in unfair trade, but also dodging the issue of, are they also sending threats into our country that could adversely affect our supply chain that warrants this new approach? Most of the other news outlets looked at this as a new and innovative and big new strategy, targeting first and foremost CCP-affiliated organizations, Chinese nationals, of course, emphasizing this doesn't mean all Chinese people. It means those that have questionable ties that go back to risk factors the federal government has identified for decades, similar to how we address counterproliferation threats. Major progress here. Now, our national narrative gets full of things that change every other day. But this also importantly filtered out into the states. Detroit News, we've covered significantly the efforts in Michigan, and that fungus import of that terrible thing by those two researchers was actually in Michigan. The Detroit News covered this big announcement, emphasizing that China's American land grab threatens Michigan's future too. That's a very important principle. It's good that this debate is moving into the states and the state legislatures, and it would be great if we have the laboratories of democracy at the local and state level coming up with better options for the federal government moving forward. Baltimore Sun pointed out how the land near military bases was of particular concern. And it was interesting that Secretary of Defense Hegseth was one of the key principals at the press release, but also spoke in very, very clear terms about agriculture security being national security, and the land near our military bases cannot be controlled by foreign adversaries, even if under the umbrella of agriculture, because of sensitive operations that might be necessary in a time of crisis, or the surveillance that we know the CCP engages in. Baltimore Sun It was followed by the Oklahoman and other outlets that questioned, would these kinds of things affect the ag industry and farmland in Oklahoma, Texas, other nearby states. Of course, we have some big states with big equities in agriculture. But I think through all of this, the farmers and ranchers of our country welcomed the federal government, recognizing the strategic importance of the work that they do, the vital mission that they engage in feeding Americans first, but also after creating more than Americans could ever consume, America's farmers also safely and reliably feed the world. We are the most reliable partner in this enterprise. And by following this strategy, I think that the Department of Agriculture, with this unprecedented team across agencies, from law enforcement to Homeland Security to defense and others, will bring home victory in this very important policy shift. So with that, I'm Steve Yates, your host here at the China Desk with this week's newsreel. Hope you found it of interest. Please shoot us a comment or ideas about other topics you would like to cover. Until next time, I'm Steve Yates.